Hey, friends! Good to see you.
Our lighting is horrible.
I know. The lighting's horrible.
Oh, well.
Thanks for your patience with us being sick over that last week. Our whole family.
Got the creeping crud,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Yeah.
But we might cough a little bit here and drink a little extra water today. But otherwise, yeah, we're back and happy to be so. Today, we're going to be talking about the Amish and ask questions at any time. We did a poll again, and a lot of people sounded really interested in this. And it's a really big part of our life here.
Yeah. One of the reasons we love it so much in this area.
Yeah, I think when we moved here, we were excited right away about the Amish. And it was maybe a big influence on why we wanted to move here, because we knew there were these people that lived very differently. And in some ways, because there's definitely positive, negative things about their lifestyle, like any other lifestyle, but accorded in some ways with some things that we hold as values in our family. And so, boy, we came,
Well,
yeah.
I was just going to say, we're going to talk, but if you have questions or you have comments or you've had experiences also with the Amish, feel free to share at any time because that's what's fun about this is that we all get to kind of sort of talk back and forth to each other. So don't be afraid to ask questions or interrupt. So go ahead.
Well, I know when we first came down here and we were going for an ice bath tomorrow. Yes,
oh, wow. Yeah.
Right on. We'll have to talk about the Amish and their ability to be in the cold.
Okay. Yeah, they're pretty crazy.
Yeah. But to just jump in, when we first came down here, I was afraid of the Amish. And I was super excited to meet them, but I was super intimidated too. What are these people going to be like? And are they going to just be really, we're called English, all of us.
The Amish call us English, and we say Amish, but they call themselves Amish. So just some clarification.
When I told our Amish friend Chester that I was afraid initially, he just laughed and laughed. Because, of course, a radical peacefulness is part of their culture and their way. And that even extends to not, hey, Sean, to even not being verbally unkind, I've found in general.
Yeah.
And so, so I was pretty intimidated. But I also had to learn that when we use the word Amish, that's actually talking about a broad range of lifestyles. It's not just one way.
Yeah, within their society, they have a lot of different I want to say levels. I don't know, that doesn't sound right, but some of them are very strict adherents to what their rules are, and then some of their groups are less stringent. The group that we live nearby is fairly conservative, and so
it's very quite strict, I guess, is what we mean when we say conservative there, as far as adherence to a number of the religious values.
Yeah, I mean, it goes with all different parts of their life. Like an example would be, we have an Amish community around here, and then as we were hello there, as we were driving someplace else, we noticed, hey, look at that buggy. Because that's one thing you see around here a lot, are horse-drawn buggies and carts and big teams out in the field. So we saw this buggy, and the buggy had this plexiglass front to it, which we do not have in our Amish community. And we were very curious about that. And so, of course, we have this great friend, Chester, and he is a leather worker, and we just have a great friendship with him, and he's very curious about the English. We're very curious about the Amish, and so we a lot of times swap stories about, hey, why do you guys do this, or what does that mean? And he'll ask us questions about the English. And so we went and we asked him. We said, we saw this buggy and it had this plexiglass front, and so he said, oh yeah, that's a different community, and they are less strict, and so our elders have said we cannot have any coverings in the front, and And he said, and it'll just make you weak. You know, then you'll get in, you'll be used to being warm, and you'll get out in the cold and you'll be freezing. And so his viewpoint of it was just really kind of fun to hear about. But the Amish community where we live, they do not have any screens or glass on the front of their buggies, and that is just purely because this community has decided that is not appropriate.
So one of the cool things for us is that we're going to be doing our new channel here in a little while, and you'll get to see our first video. So we kind of love fantasy and imagine a time when there weren't cars and there were just horses and people would walk.
There could still be a time when there aren't cars.
You know, that could happen.
I'll be okay with that. We dream sometimes about just having a horse and buggy and doing all of our errands up here on the ridge with our horse and buggy and not using our car.
Yeah, we could almost do that here with the Amish community because they have a lot of stores and things right within horse riding distance. But it's really neat around here to ride around, and we're in our car, but all around us, people riding horses, using horses in the fields, in their buggies with their horses. It makes you feel like you're in a different time, in a different world almost. And in a way, they live in a different world. And it's one of the coolest things is that there's this culture that holds to some of the kind of rewilding values of living more simply, essentially. And this is a very thriving culture that does just fine without the internet. I mean, a lot of Amish people I've asked, they don't know what YouTube is. So, so this would not make sense what we're all doing here. Without electricity for a lot of them, without having certainly not a smartphone or anything, and not even a telephone in your house, although they sometimes have a community phone.
No insurance.
No insurance. Yeah. A lot of things that we might consider to be necessary for living, they've chosen to do without, and they do just fine without it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I got to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Talk about their toughness. The
Okay.
Amish are tough.
Because you were talking about doing your ice bath. So imagine going around in the Wisconsin winter, and you travel in a horse and buggy, and there's nothing in front of you. For our community here, like you said,
Yeah.
There's no windshield. It's just the wind coming in, and there's no laundry machine or laundry drying machine in your house. So when you've done your laundry by hand, you take it out and you hang it up outside, no matter what the weather is. Yeah. So we have these people that, me being into the cold stuff, I'm put to shame all the time by kids, Amish kids.
Okay, going to school because they either have boots or they go barefoot. And so it was like, there was one October, very cold, raining, and here are these school kids, 8, 9 years old, and they are plodding along on the gravel road, totally barefoot, running along like it's nothing. And you were so astounded.
Going,
you just put your shoes on, yeah. And it's the same with their hands. We got some driving lessons, how to drive a buggy, and one of the Amish, the daughter of one of our Amish friends was teaching us, and she's just out here in the winter. I have no idea what the temperature was, maybe 8 degrees Fahrenheit. And cold. She has her bare hands using the leather, tacking up the horse.
Yeah. And this is, there's all the metal buckles, and she just has her hands on those. I'm all mittened up. And so I took them off just to experiment with it. And wow, my fingers are starting to go numb right away sitting there on the metal. But she's doing it like it's nothing.
Yeah, you said, don't your hands ever get cold? She said, usually when I'm putting up laundry in the winter. So
where her hands would be drenched and out there in the cold, in the wind. So that's been another inspiring thing, is to see, And when you have a people that are doing with less comforts, it means that they are more comfortable in things that would make us uncomfortable.
Okay, just take their clothes, for example. In the summertime, they cook over a stove all the time. But the men and women have to wear certain clothing. We have an Amish hat here, which is kind of cool. The men all wear these hats, this kind, except for when they're going to a fancy occasion, they have a different kind of hat. But they are wearing hats, always hats, and then they're wearing long sleeve shirts, and they're wearing a long pants, and almost always these clothes are darker colors. And this is all through the summer, no matter if it's 90 degrees and it's really humid, they're out there in the fields doing work. And it's just kind of boggles my mind because they're not different. We're all humans. So how come I can't do that too? And so seeing them a lot of times, I get inspired to think, no, I want to extend my comfort range beyond what I'm used to. If they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been a big part of the inspiration, I think, is seeing that there's an aspect of human potential. And this is stuff we know, we talk about this on this channel, but to see a whole people that are living this
Down in
way.
Texas.
Yeah.
There's Amish in Mexico, though.
Yes, there are Amish in Mexico.
I
so
just
consider
found that out.
Yeah. So, yeah, think of wearing that full body, usually black, if
Dark blue.
but often black attire in the sun. So super, super resilient to heat, super resilient to the cold. And a reminder of what's waiting outside the comfort zone for all of us. And it helps us too to think about, wow, are there some things that we could do without?
Mm-hmm.
And we are not yet doing without a car, but that has been a talk that our family has had at times, is would a car be necessary? Or could we do some kind of a car share with our neighbors and have a horse and buggy or bicycles or something and do a lot of what we would need to do just right here on the ridge. So when we say on the ridge, we're in a location where all the land is divided into these really tall ridges and deep valleys. And each ridge often is its own community. And some of those ridges are mostly Amish. And we live on a ridge that's about 50% English, about 50% Amish. So do the Amish make their own clothing as well? And how does that work for your community? So great question.
Yeah.
And that is, so even though our community is very strict, there are stricter ones. So Rebecca showed you this hat.
This hat in particular is probably not from the community you're talking about. But
right. This one is machine made, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have a part of the community where we live where they grow the grasses and make the hats for all. So they grow the grasses, then they harvest them, then they dry them, and then they weave the hats. And that is what the community uses, are the hats from the things they grow.
Right.
And they do sew their own clothes. Now, I'm not sure if all of their clothing, like their boots, for example, those they purchase, but there's only specific kind of boots they can wear. And the women are not allowed buttons. So I was blown away. I still don't know the answer to this because I'm too afraid to ask. The women have pins, okay? So in their shirts, it's pinned with like, a pin, a straight pin, okay? I don't know if there's a little thing on the other side backing it, or they're just wearing straight pins. And if they bend over wrong while they're cooking, they're poked with pins. I don't really know. But our community does not have buttons. It's too fancy. Because the Amish are really consider themselves the simple folk, the plain folk, and their strength is in their community, and they are all equal in the eyes of God. And so their clothing comes from that way too. They all wear the same type of clothing. The women all have these black shawls that they make. They also have bonnets. I'm not sure if they make the bonnets, but they do make a lot of their clothes. And I'd like to ask Chester that.
That's a good question. Yeah.
They make a lot of their own leather goods. They make they make their own buggies. They make their own harnesses for the horses. They make a lot of things. And that is actually beneficial to us because if we need something, we can go to the Amish, and the Amish, they charge what they need. And they have a big community, so they support each other. So we can go get things that cost nothing, that would cost us $80 if I went to the regular store. And they want $2, because it's easy for them to repair it, or it's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've taken my shoes in many times to Chester, our friend, and he's done for just $1 or $2, fixed up and repaired these shoes that probably I would have had to get rid of and get new shoes in our modern culture, because few people do those kinds of repairs anymore. But that's part of their culture, is to repair things and not just always get a new thing. So that, yeah, Nicole.
Yeah.
So
See,
we'll look into that.
I don't know. Now, we have a good friend of ours who is a midwife to the Amish. And so she has more information because she's known them for many years. And she's often going to their homes and doing, helping with birthing and checking on babies afterwards. So we get to ask her questions like, do they have mirrors? And do they drink coffee? And, do they hug? Because the other week we were getting our milk. We get raw milk and dairy and eggs and things from our Amish friends. And the woman of the house had lost her parent, her father, and she was very sad. We were saying, oh, we're very sorry for your loss. And she seemed like she was going to cry. And I said, can I hug you? May I hug you? And she took a while, like, well, and then she said, I'd rather not. And, I said, well, that's why I ask. But found out from then our midwife friend that the Amish are not, they don't hug other people. Yeah. So I just found that very interesting. They're very warm in general towards us and are very willing to help anybody. But yeah, there was that kind of like, I don't know. I was like, oh gosh, did I offend her or not? But she didn't seem like it. So
a fierce hugger. Hey, Christina. Yes, Nicole. Imagine with the breastfeeding, with those straight pin closures.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, there's, and obviously we could go into things that are maybe not as positive about their culture. It's a very patriarchal culture, and a lot of the things that I would consider
come on in.
To be
children.
Yeah.
Oh, I got to take over. Okay. This is me. Yeah, each of the Amish, they're like us. They're different. We know some Amish who, for example, our friend Chester, he started a special needs school for the Amish here, because within the community there are special needs Amish children, just like there are in the English world. And he said directly to us, oh, you guys would think all the Amish were Amish. Everybody's going to support this school. He said, oh no. He said, there are people in this community who were like, no, we do not agree with that. And he went ahead anyway and made the school. And he said, some of those people's children started coming to our school, and they noticed how it was a big difference for them and made a big difference. He said a lot of those people have changed their mind, but he said not all the Amish think alike. And so that was just one example of, should there be a special needs school? Should we be giving these kids, an opportunity that they wouldn't otherwise get? And not all the Amish agreed with that, even within their personal community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We have a couple.
Oh, sorry.
So I like to go barefoot too, and I'm not even really nice.
Barefoot is its own religion, right?
Austria. Wow, how cool is that?
Nice.
I respect culture and the way of conservation. I don't understand why those humble people are not. So, Muslim or Muslim? So not quite sure what your last word is there, Mahmoud. So if you could clarify for that, that would be great. Drew.
Yeah, Drew, that's interesting because they are very green and very eco in a lot of ways. But in a lot of ways, they also are not.
Yeah, it's been interesting here.
Yeah, do you want to talk about that?
Well, and there's a couple of things that I sort of assumed. So these are people that grow a lot of their own food. So I assume they'd have this really clean diet. But
Slovenia, wow, hi.
wow, Slovenia.
Was there a new book in the making? Good question. Well,
We'll get to that. But there's this love of sugar in this culture.
Yeah.
And so lots of white flour baked goods and not super great diet.
Yeah, I mean, for example, their teeth. So there's not a lot of hygiene when it comes to their teeth. We know a few Amish people who've already had all their teeth removed and replaced, and they're in their 30s. So not that that's a bad, that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just harder. Our midwife friend is always saying, "Oh, I'm always trying to get the moms to have more vegetables and less sugar." And they do. The Amish also do, tend to use a lot of, kerosene and other things like that, and don't necessarily. How do I put this?
Well, there's just not a lot of us might do recycling or try to be conscious of buying plastic or things like that. And that consciousness doesn't seem to be in the community really strongly. So that was surprising for us to see. But in many ways, just living more simply, yes, they're automatically more green in that sense of if you're not driving a car, purchasing a car, and tons of stuff that we do that's just very consumption based. Okay.
Yeah, I don't, that's a good question about the brushing of the teeth. Is it something that's considered too much concerning your appearance? That's a really good question. And I don't know, I'll have to ask our midwife friend. Also, Johan, about the horses. That's an interesting thing that you bring up. Again, here it's very individual. Our friend Chester loves his horses, and he is very protective of his horses. And he will talk about other Amish. He'll say, yeah, I am not trying to say anything against my neighbors or other people, but I have noticed people who don't treat their horses as well. And his kind of whole point is that if you don't treat your animals kindly, you're going to run into issues. And because this is their mode of transportation, there are Amish accidents, like vehicles hit Amish buggies and things. So I said, if you have a horse that's scared of you or that you're mistreating, it is more dangerous for you. So it is, I have heard of Amish, even from the Amish, mistreating their horses. But I also know some Amish who absolutely love and revere their horses, of which their whole lifestyle, if they did not have horses, they could not do some of the things they're doing.
Yeah.
Especially with those big teams and all of the field work that they do. Yeah.
Yes, Tim saw, the old Rambles. I didn't see the new Ramble. A new book, Robert. Our next book that we're going to be putting out is probably going to be a fiction that we wrote quite a while ago, and it's the first of 2 books in the series. And so it's a little bit of a slightly dystopian kind of fiction story, but we'll let you know when it comes out. Let's see.
Such good comments here, everybody. Yeah. It's really interesting, the idea of other, because in the end,
Trish.
Yeah, Trish. In the end, there's so much we have in common. Like going out with our friend Chester, he'll take our family on usually a sleigh ride every winter around his property. He loves nature, and he does love hunting. The Amish, they love to hunt, and they love to maple syrup, and they really love the outdoors. And so part of what they love about the hunting or the syruping is just being out. And we'll go during a syruping season, and our friend Chester will say, "Oh, I can't wait to be out and just checking the taps today." And so it's really interesting how I've felt over time that even though there's a vast difference in the way that we are in our lives, there's so much in common too. And I think that's important to remember with any other, is that the difference is probably not as big as we think it is. There's probably more in common.
Yeah, I mean, that's vital in today's world. I'm glad you brought that up, Trish, because I think we're almost being trained in our culture to focus on differences. And sometimes to do that in a very judgmental way. And so this community around here, both the Amish and the English, it's been really interesting to see that it's this rural community where there are some super conservative people, very right, some very left people. There's the Amish in that mix who have their own perspective. And I see so much harmony
Yeah.
among those different groups. And that's not the message. If I go on the media for 5 minutes, I'm going to be getting the complete opposite message. But to see real live people interacting, helping each other out, realizing we have some differences, but there's more that we have in common than we have as differences. And so this has been a reaffirmation of the goodness of humanity for me being down in this area.
Yeah. You read the comments. There's some really awesome comments in there. I wanted to bring up, speaking of community, that at least where we are, our Amish community is their insurance. We talked in the beginning about how they don't have any, health insurance or house insurance. And there have been a number of times that we have had fires within the Amish community where we live. And, immediately everyone is helping out. And so the day after a fire, you'll see, there's like 100 buggies at the person's house, and they're cleaning and they're caring for the family. And literally sometimes it's 2 weeks later and a brand new building is already there. We have another good friend, Chester's brother, who is a leather worker. And we had a wonderful time when we had the moneyless monks here. That we got to take them to visit, and they talked about money. And it was really interesting to hear Chester's brother Harvey talk about how the Amish community helped each other, even financially. So because there wasn't insurance, if someone's family, let's say someone, had to go to the hospital or whatever, then everyone would just hear about that, and whoever could chip in would chip in to help that family pay off their debt. And it was a very normal thing for him. It wasn't like, yeah, this is an unusual thing and we're really awesome because of it. It was like, oh no, everybody chips in until they're helped out. And that is something I would love to see way more in our English community, is just thinking that our resources are to be shared so that we can help each other, not like, this is mine and I worked really hard to have it and you can't have any. It's just like, I worked really hard to have this here. You need it more than I do right now. And knowing that that's going to keep coming and sharing around is really powerful for me to see.
Yeah. So that's Nicole, you speaking to that. And Johan, I see the other side of that you're getting at, because there can be also a relinquishing of responsibility when there's a shared responsibility. But I would say among the Amish, it seems to work pretty well. And this concept of, and it happens, I think, because they're thinking more of the community than of themselves. And so I've seen that bleed out into the English around here, where there's more sharing and gift economy than I've seen in other places. And I think that comes from witnessing this among the Amish, this sort of selfless giving, and recognizing that there is a value in that, because, boy, for us, we have insurance for our car or our house,
or our health.
we pay somebody who's kind of this middle person in between. But yeah, different when you just say, look, neighbor, when I'm down, I know you'll be there for me. And when you're down, I'll be there for you. And that's a different kind of insurance that you're maybe not paying into monetarily all the time, but you pay in with goodwill all the time. So you actually kind of get a return from it of goodness along the way. So, okay.
There's some really great communities here. Comments. I'm sorry, thinking about community. First of all, I just think that's a really cool story, Trish, about the Amish community rallying around your friend's barn, who obviously they weren't even Amish, they have a lot of generosity, and it's really neat to be around their way of thinking. It's much slower, their pace of life. And I think that's part of what we're talking about here. Someone has said, kind of feel like you're hosed when you're with the typical American culture. Yeah, in some ways it feels like there's a certain gift that we don't get to experience because it's not part of our regular culture. And that's where living amongst the Amish, when you interact with them, when you talk with them, they're there with you, like they're talking with you. And sometimes you can't get away from them. We went to a neighbor's house and we went to get some eggs. And then I asked her a question about something in her house, a drying rack or something like that. She said, "Oh, come in, come in." And she started just showing me her whole house, Kenton and I. And Mirabelle was in the car waiting for us to just get eggs. And it's like 45 minutes later, when we finally said, "Oh, we need to go," our daughter's in the car. And she's like, "What were you guys doing?" And we're like, "We got a whole tour of an Amish house." And it was just like, their way is it's slower. And, imagine you don't have cell phones ringing. You have no email to check. You have, no internet to go on, no television to watch. I mean, it's really interesting. A neighbor of ours lives next to some Amish, and she said it's really cool because in the evenings in the summer, when they're all done with their work, you bike by or you walk by and they're just sitting on their porch and they're talking. And sometimes the kids are playing. They like to play tetherball. And there's just this different feeling of not so fast, not so much, not like, "Hey, yeah, thanks, great, I gotta go now." And it's just a really neat thing to experience.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
sorry.
let's see.
I get like,
yeah, Drew, you're speaking to the loneliness, and I think that's a big part of what is negative about the culture we're all weaving, the English culture, is that communityness is not often emphasized. Now it can be, there are some great there are some great ways that people are harnessing the power of communities in the country, in the city, all over the place. And even our social media can sometimes work to do that. But at the same time, if we don't use those tools really, really wisely, it can end up just people sitting in front of a screen and never connecting with actual people. And probably all of us know people that have trouble interacting with humans at this point because we get so used to that screen interaction that we'd see that at ReWild U a lot, people coming who had strong social anxiety and use that screen
as a protective
shield. Yeah. Liked and shared. Thank you so much.
We're talking a little bit about illnesses here too. There is definitely obesity. Probably I would say more so in the women. And my theory is a little bit that if you had to have a baby pretty much every year, and then you didn't get, the men are working hard. And who said this? Somebody was talking about that. Oh yeah, injuries. So there are injuries due to farming. That does happen. You see the men out doing a lot of the physical labor. It's not that the women aren't tough too. It's just that the child rearing, I think, is very immense. And Amish have big families, 14.
So there's no birth control allowed. So
14, women 16 kids.
Pregnant.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I think that I don't feel like I'm built for that. They love their families, and that's a really important thing for them. But I think combining that with the sugary diet, there are cases of obesity. And what was interesting was COVID and the Amish, if we were talking about illnesses, they did not social distance. That would have been worse for them than not being sick, not being able to gather together, not being able to help each other. And so our Amish community at least did not social distance, and they got sick. However, I didn't hear of any more Amish folk dying from COVID initially than I heard of English folk. And what was very interesting is that round about the time phase 2 came for the English folk, almost all the Amish in our community had it and were done with it and had developed herd immunity. And so it was a really interesting thing to watch at the time, like the Amish doing their thing and then the English doing their thing, and kind of seeing how it played out.
But to really kind of hit your question there about, the diet, the sugary diet and the typical diseases, I wouldn't say they're probably saved from some really, really bad health by being so active. So they have that activity, and we know community is very good for us health-wise too. But dietarily and safety-wise, I would say the health is not super great. That's not a strong point in their culture.
We're talking a little bit about everybody knowing everybody and what you do about that when you're related to everybody. It is really hilarious because Chester, our leather worker friend, knows everybody. And literally when we drive around with him, because sometimes we're his English taxi, that's a service that English folk do for Amish, is they drive the Amish places. So we've often taken our friend Chester to get tools or things that he needs. And he knows everybody by the back of their buggy. He's like, oh, that's my, my brother's son, and that's my uncle, and so there is that concern about interacting and intermarriage. And I do know that the Amish have a lot of travel between their different communities. So, for example, Chester's wife, her family, they live in Ohio, and so they visit them, and then people's, they'll get together and they'll travel farther than you think they will via Amish. Well, English Amish, I never know what to call it. English people taxiing the Amish. They'll go to Pennsylvania, they'll go down to Illinois, and they'll even go down to Mexico for doctoring. So they do travel, and they do move and change locations. And I think that helps a lot with there being too much connection between family ties.
But you're right. And there's just not the same genetic diversity that we're used to in a world where people travel all over the place all the time, and so many cultures mixing. And so I would say anecdotally, there's a higher incidence of genetic issues. So there's, again, health is not what you'd expect, except saved by the the intense outdoor physical labor, which you brought up a little bit. Pause. That also comes with accidents and things because they don't have the same safety care that we might have. So
Jade Dragon's bringing up the produce shop, which that's a huge part of our life, is that the Amish have discount stores, and they do have these awesome produce stands where you can just show up and you just write down. We have one at the end of our road. Wonderful, wonderful Amish neighbors of ours, and it's just a thing they do on the side. And you just show up, you write down what you have, you put your money in, and you go. And it's a complete honor system. We have that with milk down the road too. You just can walk in and get milk and eggs. You pay for it. You return your containers. It's a blessing for us because the Amish, again, they only charge what they believe the value is to them, and they live so differently than us that, we can get, eggs for $2 a dozen. We've talked about having chickens here, but I'm like lazy. Why? I can go get eggs from my Amish neighbors and I don't have to do anything. It's like spoiling me. Same with the produce, and they're not certified organic, but they don't use anything because that would cost them money. They just have a lot of beautiful, hard work in the fields.
Yeah, so we get a lot of our food from the Amish, and that's a different. And again, there's some Amish that are more into collecting money, but overall in the community, it's not like us where the idea is to collect and save up as much money as you can. It's just to have enough. And that's why there's a fairer pricing, I think, that happens. And here in the US, a while ago, this summer, egg prices sky. I think it was $7 at the grocery store or something. And the Amish didn't. They could have followed
don't.
suit, right, and made a lot more money, but they just kept their pricing and ignored that trend.
Yeah. Well, they have each other, and so they are fair to each other. Um, yeah. That's, Nicholas is wondering, how can I go learn to build a house from the Amish? The Amish are incredible when it comes to just all sorts of things. They're so creative. The biggest thing that I think is interesting is to watch just some of the buildings that go up and the Amish barn raising. They call it a oh gosh, now why can't I think of what it's called when they all get together? Why can't I think of what it's called? I want to say it's a jubilee, but that's not it. It's
Almost.
it starts with an F. Anyway, they have a specific name when they all get together and the women all make food and why can't I think of it? And then, there's like 50, 100 guys and they're all just like putting up the rafters and building everything. And, there's just, it's so incredible to see what we're capable of when we help each other out like that. But I don't know where you could go to learn from the Amish to build. They don't necessarily around here have to build everything to code. Specifically because they don't have electricity in their houses and things like that.
$8 to $9 a dozen you're paying, Drew? Wow.
What? Oh my gosh, you should get chickens.
Holy cow, that's amazing.
Oh.
Yeah. So Drew's just telling us how much. You might see that comment here, $8 to $9 a dozen for good eggs. And he's talking about good eggs. I know Drew very well. So he's talking about eggs that are not just factory eggs. But yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. You can get a chicken for that.
We're missing some here.
I know. Sorry, there's so many comments that
taking apprentices. So when we had the moneyless monks there, and we took them over to meet our friends.
This was interesting.
Yeah, they were saying, "Hey, would you be open to us? Because we've come from across the sea. We're trying to learn about different people and cultures. Would you be open to us staying with your family for a night or something like that?"
Yeah, and they said, maybe helping out with.
Yeah.
They kind of in exchange help your family with something that they might need. Yeah.
And our friends politely declined and said, "No, that's not really our way." He said, if you came here and you were hungry and you had no place to go, we would find you food and a warm place to stay. But it's not that open of a community, at least around here, where you could go and apprentice and learn things. That being said, our friend Chester has, because we're going into his shop all the time, he's, instead of just doing the work for the girls, he's often showed them how to do it by hand.
Yeah.
So it's a fuzzy line, and it depends on the people. And a big thing with the Amish is it's developing a relationship with people. So if you did want to learn how to build or apprentice, it probably could happen. You just would have to really connect up with somebody.
Yeah, you just have to start from the beginning, start small, and then, ask questions. And again, all the Amish is just like English. You could ask an English person and they could be like, whatever. And then you could talk to the next person and they could say, oh yeah, I'd love to show you. And so we've been really blessed with our friend Chester and his family. As I mentioned before, they gave us buggy lessons on how to drive a buggy. We got to drive a little cart with a little miniature pony to start with. And then Mirabelle actually drove the big buggy with the big, the bigger horse. It was really, really neat. And they were willing to take their time out and show us how to do that. But we knew them, and we've had just a back and forth of kind of caring for each other's families. So I think it just kind of depends. There's definitely Amish places we've pulled into, and all the children are like this at the window, and they're looking at you like, whoa,
what are you?
And you definitely feel, sometimes how you see people in like with tribes where like, they look at your hair. And so we're very fascinating to them just as they are to us. And sometimes in those places, I can also feel like, oh, maybe I should be just a little bit more polite, more respectful, because I think they're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nicole, we haven't experienced anything like that. And again, the Amish are people, and there's going to be some dishonest people. And we know that there are some Amish people in certain communities who look at the English and really don't like them. And we've had some experiences where we've met some Amish folk, even around here, that have been pretty standoffish. In general, this community is super open and they really value honesty. And so I mean, I've had arguments with the woman we get our milk from saying, no, I did not pay you extra last time. And she's saying, no, I'm sure you paid me extra last time. And so you cannot pay me this time. No, I know I haven't. And so, yeah, so, but we'll not discount that for sure.
Christina's giving some good places to go.
Thank you, Christina, for giving people those.
So, I understand, Jade Dragon, some of the families are too reserved and afraid to engage with the public. So that's really interesting because not all of the English are friendly to the Amish. And when we've been going out with our friend Chester, he actually, his family was in a buggy truck accident, like large truck, like,
logging truck.
Right.
Yeah.
That I'm surprised that he made it alive. And yeah, I mean, his whole buggy got caught by the wheel of the truck and dragged, and he was knocked unconscious, and his family fell out of the buggy. And he said there are some people, when you're out driving the buggy, he said it's very apparent that they do not like the Amish, and they don't believe the Amish should be on the roads, and they will treat you very badly, and they will do dangerous things, and they will, honk at you and try to drive you off the side of the road. And, he was kind enough to say that's not a normal thing, but he did say it's not, like.
We've seen it when we're driving. We've seen people that are
very disrespectful, so dangerous, not just for the Amish, but for themselves and for other drivers.
And it's a small percent, 90% of the people are really, if you're going over a hill and you're behind a buggy, they'll just drive slowly behind and wait until there's good visibility.
And it's really beautiful in the countryside.
But then you get somebody that just
boom. I think my point is that there are certainly some people who I think dislike the Amish, or maybe have had a bad experience. And so I can understand where, as a people who are reserved and have a certain value system in place, that it is better not to interact and have to deal with that, So maybe that's where some Amish folk are frightened or are very reserved. So let's see here.
Yeah, Trish correlating that experience of some people, and that's, as you're saying, with any group, right? There's going to be people that are respectful, and there's going to be people that aren't.
I wish there were no cars too, Christina. Totally.
Keep their businesses small instead of a corporation.
Very family run in general.
Yeah,
and beautiful work too. I mean, the woodworking, the like the cabinetry making and the furniture, and at least in our community, they're very proud of it, but not in a proud way. Like, you can just see they are going to do the best they can do. They're going to do a good job and a strong job, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's been one of the fun things, Nicholas, has been finding these businesses, because many houses just have a little business inside of some kind, or they do something, or they sell produce, or they sell honey. And sometimes there's signs out front, but sometimes you just get to know people and you ask, where can I find this? And they'll say, go down to this person's house. And so you also start to discover all these little businesses that are just run out of houses.
That's pretty fun. Lots of little candy shops.
Lots of candy shops.
Actually, yes. Like just on this side. I know.
Much sugar. Nicole, you're so right. Yeah, when he describes that accident, dang.
I know.
And this was a person that was known to just cut
Yeah.
really close to buggies. And this time his truck caught the wheel, just flipped it up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Johan, I think we can all agree that there's lots of different people who are minority groups that are just not seen in a respected fashion. I wonder, what it would feel like if people could experience that other side for a little bit, just to know, hey, it doesn't really hurt to be nice to people.
Yeah, no, it's where it's travel can be good. I spent a little time in Nepal, so I got to be someone that everybody stared at and had opinions about. And it's if you're deep in the Amish community here, there are times, like you said, where the kids are just staring at you out the window, like, what is that car? What are those weird clothes they're wearing? And you get a chance coming from the dominant culture to feel what it might be like in a non-dominant culture.
There's so many good comments coming in here. How do the Amish react when they get to know our family and our way of life? They're very curious about us. We've given our friend Chester some of our books, especially the Chasing Turkeys book, which he thought was hilarious. But it's really interesting. We've had conversations with Chester about technology, and we'll say, oh, we're on our phone too much, or on our computer too much. And he'll say, even the Amish have their things that they can get too much into. Like they like to call the taxis and drive around as like a thing to do. And he said, even he feels sometimes the stress of busyness, of taking on too many things. And I think that's helped me see that that's part of human nature, is accepting too much into our lives and spreading ourselves too thin. Because he'll say, oh, I keep thinking I'm going to have some time to work on this or work on that. And I just go, go, go. And he said, we're probably not that much different from the English in that way.
Yeah. That was interesting to hear, because we perceive of them as having such a slow lifestyle. But him seeing that's maybe a universal human problem. And we focus on how technology affects us in that way, but there's many other things, even living a simpler life, that you can get too focused on and forget what's important. That's sad to hear, Trish.
It's
social security system.
What
a good point, Nicholas, because it's and it's a thing now. In the Amish community, there's social expectations, to help each other out, but it's not forced in the same way that our tax system, for instance, is you have to comply with it or you'll go to jail. And so it's a different, I think, underlying attitude about helping each other because it's the right thing to do and because it's just feels good to help your
talking
community.
About the lanterns at night on their buggies. It is challenging. Around here, it's even more so because it is so hilly. And so there's times you'll come over a hill and then there'll be a buggy. And so you really have to think about it. And I sometimes wish that there were more signs, because we get a lot of people around here in the summer that are tourists who don't know about the Amish. And so it's, I worry for them. They seem to have this attitude of like, that's life. And, God's going to watch out for us. And if it's our time to go, it's our time to go. Because they do some crazy stuff. I'm just thinking about them cutting their ice with that massive wheel. They cut ice that they make in the winter time for their ice houses. And they have this, how do they power that thing?
That's gasoline power.
Okay.
So for some reason it's okay to use a gasoline.
I don't know. But anyway, they have this ginormous saw and they're like, their hands are right by and they're just cutting up their ice. And I swear some of the stuff they do is so dangerous. Okay, wait, I wanted to look and see. The Amish go to school for about till 8th grade, right?
I just have to say I love this about our community. So we have Yunka Paz and Johan. Seeing things from two different sides, invalidating each other, and seeing that there's different ways to look at the situation. So different than I often see in comment sections where people just try to find ways to rip on each other. So thank you, you two, for exploring this, because we probably won't go into that, but that's a very complex and deep subject, as far as what they learn and is it valuable? Where do we know when to stop learning? How am I trying to say this? I don't know.
Well,
how much do we learn about politics? How much do we learn about, are these things important?
How much are we supposed to learn about anything?
And that's a giant thing, which we probably shouldn't try to tackle.
I will say it just keeps coming back to people being individual, because you have friends like Chester, who he knows a lot more, I feel like, about the English culture than I think some Amish do, who do
Oh,
seem
thank you,
more
Doris.
reserved. Yeah, I know, so sweet. And again, it kind of comes down to what kind of life do you want for yourself? And even amongst the Amish who might have some more strict social rules in place, there's still those who are very interested and very like outgoing, and there's still those that are like very shy and very reserved. And so it's fun to find the ones that are interested in connecting, and then you really feel like, hey, we're two people, maybe we come from different backgrounds, but we're enjoying, whatever situation we're in at the moment. Yeah.
Jade Dragon, you're hitting on that again. Oh man, it is so complex. I think about that sometimes. I remember seeing an Amish person on a talk show or something, and didn't know who the president was, and didn't know this, and didn't know this when she was growing up in the Amish culture. And so those are really good questions. We value information so much in our culture, and there's seemingly no, where do we stop intaking information? And it's hard to know that line just for ourselves. Where do we stop watching news programs? Where do we stop
take out the IV
digging into, right? And is it okay to grow up not knowing who the president of the United States is if you live in the United States? I don't know. My cultural training says you must know these things. I'm not sure if it is essential or not. And that's just,
I'm
those
sorry,
are
I'm
big
going to
questions.
rant here
Okay,
for a second.
that's right.
My problem is that, this is my perspective, is that, okay, so we homeschool our kids, and I experience tons of like guilt and angst because am I teaching my kids the right thing? I'm not necessarily telling them who the Pilgrims were, and they don't know what a Snickers bar is, and all these things. But my kids do know a lot more about emotional resilience than I did at their age. And they do know how to talk to other grown-ups, and they do know how to put their thoughts into words. And they do know a lot about wild edibles and about survival, and they know how to be nice to people. And they know, there's a lot of stuff we don't learn that I wish our culture would teach us. And I would rather give up knowing some date 500 years ago if we grew up learning how to like talk with each other, how to recognize when someone is really upset and we need to like help them settle down. There's so much emotional resilience and a whole bunch of other things. And having lived with you, there's a lot of real life skills in some ways that I feel like would be more valuable perhaps than knowing who the president, the 15th president was or whatever, which I don't know.
You don't know the 15th.
I know, I don't know. I barely know who our president is right now.
Homeschooled my daughter. She got a few years in the charter school and was glad. Yeah. So, it is a beautiful thing about our culture that there are so many influences, and we live in this time where we can learn about wisdom cultures from around the world, different ways of doing things. It's a beautiful thing, and that's definitely something the Amish don't have. But I think there's also a price for some of those things too, and so it's this weird double-edged blade where there are great things about knowing more and more.
I'm sorry, the reading heels.
Okay,
Thanks, you guys, for your votes of confidence. And it's individual. Some kids do great in school, and we've always told our girls they can go if they want to. I wish there were ways that people could experience different things. Like, okay, you could all go to school now for a week, and then everybody could be homeschooled, and then people could try this and they could try that, because we don't always get a chance to try things out without having to fully commit to them. I guess that just teaches you grit. But anyway, thanks, Drew, on the whole Snickers education.
Oh, sorry, guys. They're coming so fast.
Right,
We're losing some here.
Oh, thank you, Trish. I had a feeling you would understand what I mean. Let's see here. That's very true. Let's see here. Wow, nice, car free.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
I mean,
Much respect.
anybody who can. It's easier when you're in a town in some ways, like when you can walk places, but it's still possible out in the country. Um, let's see here.
I think, Nicole, at least around here, our community does have to pay taxes. Um, so, at least sales taxes.
Hmm.
So maybe that was different in the community you're familiar with. So I can't really speak to that. Well, I'm gonna kind of agree with you there, Nicholas, in some ways. Some kids thrive in the school system. I have a martial arts student, and she is valedictorian in her class. She loves school. She thrives in that, but a lot of kids don't.
Right.
And I certainly did not at all.
I still have dreams about getting into my locker
It was, yeah, it
and
was
showing up
almost
at the wrong class.
just
and
traumatic.
not knowing. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's a system that can work for some people, but we shouldn't be making the mistake of thinking that this is a system that works for all kids, because it is failing a lot of kids, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really interesting with the Amish kids. I haven't had a chance to go into any of their schoolhouses, but the way I understand
yes.
it is that around here they go until about 8th grade. And I just learned our community around here only goes to school, I think, 3 days a week.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see them all in their cloaks and their little lunch pails, going to school. But they do learn English because the Amish in our community at least speak Pennsylvania Dutch. And so when they're young, it's kind of fun. With one of our families that we talk to, there's a little boy, and he'll just talk to you in Pennsylvania Dutch, and then we'll talk back in English. And then he'll talk back in Pennsylvania Dutch. And, we don't know what each other is saying, but we're smiling at each other nonetheless. So,
Yeah, so they're all bilingual.
yeah.
Thank you again for biking. Yes,
Yeah.
it keeps you fit. If we were using our bodies more, it just would be good for our health. But it's modern conveniences make it really easy, and then it's yeah.
I just wanted to point out what Trish says here about learning about how to learn. That's
Yes.
really important, a super important skill, because when you know how to do that, then you can learn anything, and you can learn where to go to learn what you need to learn. So here on that one, I sometimes wish we had more of an infrastructure to help one another apprentice or learn something from someone else. I mean, so the internet is great and you can learn a lot from it. And I've learned a lot of things, but there's something about the human element too that's really cool. And it would be interesting if somehow we could connect. And that's one of the things I appreciate about the Amish in our community, at least that we know, is when we do go in, let's say to Chester's to get some leather work done. And he does take the time to show the girls, hey, here's how you can press into the leather and you can make that, that word on there. And it's really interesting because he's so hands-on. And if he's got time, he'll show you how to do it or let you do it yourself. And that's just so unheard of. I mean, obviously we could cut our finger off, so, but he doesn't care. He's just like, come on in here, let me show you how this works. And I love that idea of learning how to learn as a skill. So
learning clubs. Yeah, that would be great, because okay, one problem is child labor. Children probably have to help a lot, which is good. So the Amish kids, I mean, they put to work really early, and it's not, they're not going to get in trouble with the laws because they're not being paid, but you're expected to haul your weight in these families. And because you're doing everything by hand, there's a lot more work.
Okay. Amish lawns are perfect, and they do it all with a push mower.
Push mower, meaning that it's all powered by
you push it and it rotates around and it cuts the grass, and their lawns look way better than ours. I mean, I'm using electric push mower, but I tell you, and I've seen like 4 kids out mowing a lawn at one time.
And sometimes it's one kid behind it, and then they tied a string to it. It's another one pulling.
It's really cute.
And
I think
so it's different.
I think one thing I just wanted to say about that, about kids helping out, is that I do see a lot of the Amish kids playing, but I think in their community, and I haven't asked them specifically about this, so that's just my opinion. I think it's very important for them to do these tasks because they feel like they're part of their family and they're a part of their culture. So helping out with things is not only practical because that's how they survive, but it is also meaningful for them because if they can help their younger brother or they can help their mom, they are valued in their community. And that's what's important to them in their community. You know, it might not work for, you know, my family's community, but within their community, their value comes from being able to be a part of that team.
So it's instilled really early
Right.
by helping each other out. Volunteering.
Oh,
If we all had more volunteering, Anja, oh, that'd be a beautiful thing because that is.
although where is Anja from? Maybe it's Anya. Sorry that we don't always
Yeah,
get all
tell
your
us if
things
we're
right.
messing up your
Yeah.
names, friends. Because that's available to so many of us, but often we don't take advantage of that. And it's such an opportunity, as you say, to learn things, to get the great gifts that we feel when we give selflessly without anything in return. We get more in return, right? Than when we're getting paid often. And so there's so much value in that. And I would love to see that just become more normal in our culture. And I think that could happen if people just discover the joy of it. And so, yeah, all right with you there.
Gosh, you guys have so many great comments here. Yeah.
Moving to your own condo with a garden.
Oh,
You'll have a manual push mower.
Woohoo!
Yay!
That's awesome.
Oh,
As far as I've seen, they don't work. They're not, how do I put it? It's not like you go out and you do this and you don't come back until it's done. It's like the boys go out with their dad and they're helping him out and, you know, and they take breaks and they do have a lot of play at schools. I swear, every time we drive by one of the schools, they're having a break, you know, and what they do in break is they downhill ski, they sled, they play ball, they do tetherball. They're very active kids. So it's like the chores or the work is more like what the grown-ups do. So in a weird way, it's almost like the grown-ups are saying, hey, you're capable of doing this, you know, like you have the skills. And so come and help with me with what part you can help me with.
yeah, Nicole's really summing it up in a good way.
Yeah,
here,
yeah.
And there is a difference. And, you know, in some families, maybe that line can become blurred. But
Anya, I told you.
Oh,
Sorry, Anya.
Anya.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Thank you, Anya, Colorado.
That's right.
We're no way we're going to pronounce this, Johan, but an education system based on learning through life.
See, I tried.
There's no age restriction based.
Yeah, that's
something
a
we've
neat
run
idea.
into with volunteering because the girls really want to volunteer at a
Wildlife. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
rehabilitation center.
There are there's age restrictions on volunteering, and I kind of wish that those were more based on just maturity level, that kids could come in and just show that they're mature enough. But we do here in our culture just have some arbitrary cutoffs sometimes with age.
Yeah.
Summer school holidays.
Yeah, that is interesting. I mean, I can see where summer school would come in the farming communities, be very useful. Let's see here.
Free education through volunteering.
Yeah.
Yes, they definitely cherish leisure time.
Yeah.
I mean, even though they work hard, everybody seems to have passions. It's often outdoors is the passions.
Well, Chester's family will often have a campfire and they'll roast hot dogs and they'll have ice cream. And they've got this beautiful overlook on their land that he's taken us to where they've built a platform. And he said in the summer, in the evenings when we're all done, the whole family will just go out there and we'll just sit out there and we'll just watch the valley.
Yeah.
And it's just like such a cool thought, you know, their whole family there. And
and it's just so good to see things. The other day we went by a neighbor's house and two Amish kids were out just throwing a ball back and forth to each other. And I'll be nostalgic. I remember doing that as a kid, throwing a ball back and forth
Yeah.
But so, you know, it's so much screens and things
Video
these days that
games and yeah.
it's so cool
Not
to
that
see
they don't
kids
have a
just throwing
value,
a
but
ball.
yeah.
Yeah. Ah,
Let's see here.
yes, we all need to have that balance, right?
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that we could do school, I feel like. Cool.
Let's
Yes.
ski. Ah,
There's definitely ice cream in the Amish world.
yes.
In fact,
Yes.
sometimes in the summer when we want to just be nice to Chester's family, we'll just buy them a gallon of ice cream.
Which is probably not
I know we
nice. I
shouldn't do
know
it.
we're.
I know.
Oh,
It's but
I don't know
they-
what to do about that.
yeah. Well, I guess I figured a gallon of ice cream amongst like how many people are in their family.
So no, I'm glad you asked about this. They do not have electric freezers.
Right. That,
So-
oh, maybe you weren't here for when I was talking about the ice blocks.
Yes. So they have to. Right about now, we're in midwinter here in
It's
Wisconsin.
gonna get cold.
They will block out a place in the yard and they'll start pouring water into it, and they'll build up layers and layers and layers of ice, and then they cut all that ice into blocks, and then they'll usually get old like big industrial freezers
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
aren't electric anymore, but used to be, but just have insulation, and then they'll stuff those full of the ice blocks, and that's their refrigeration and freezing through the summer. And obviously they're dependent on having cold temps and being able to pull this off every year. But at least as long as we've been here, they've pulled it off every year. And I don't know what happens if they don't.
I know.
That would
I
make
actually
things
I kind
tough.
of want to ask Chester the next time we see him. This person is asking how the Amish began to form their community. That happened a long time ago. The original quote Amish are from like Switzerland and Alsace and some of that region. And they broke away from the religious group at the time, Jacob Ammon. And then they eventually came over here. And so they brought those values with them. But I don't know the history. And I think it would be kind of fascinating of how they grew alongside of technology and where they decided that piece of technology is okay. Like we can use kerosene or gasoline, but we can't drive a car. So that I don't know. And that would be really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it was done for a long time, the ice blocks. Yeah, Trish, I see what you mean in that we can go so far in that direction of just allowing free time and play that sometimes kids value helping out their family and their community. And so sometimes we can rob them of that by not teaching them how to cook, how to
Gosh, I want to
clean,
say
how to do some things.
I remember hearing about a camp in maybe it was in California. What do they call it? Like danger camp or something like that. And they like used power tools and they like did all these dangerous things. And their idea was that, hey, you want kids to learn how to use this stuff. Now is a good time. Let's teach it to them in a safe environment. And I do think, I don't know, I guess I remember being a kid and it's like, I don't, maybe I didn't know everything, but I certainly wasn't dumb, It's like if somebody would have showed me, I could learn. And then, hey, I would have a skill that I could use to help out.
Yeah.
And so I definitely agree that it would be really nice if more places, volunteering, etc., would allow kids, even with a grown up or whatever, to be able to take that passion, because that's when you're passionate. When you're little, you're like, I want to do this and I want to help, these animals, these people, or whatever it is. Like, let's use that passion. Like, I don't see that as exploiting kids if they're really excited and they want to be a part of their community. So
what Cindy said is really interesting here, and I think super important and overlooked.
Interesting.
Because we have an assumption in our culture that there's this line between work and other parts of life. And I've often wondered about when they talk about, ancestrally, the cultures we came from, how much they worked. I think that might be a strange question because they may not even have an experience of work. When I was staying at the drum and, we would be doing work, whether it was working on a birch bark canoe or whatever we're doing, it didn't feel like work because it's just part of what you're doing in the community. And so that might be an artifact of our culture, where there's this idea that you step out of your life to go do something that you don't want to do in a trade for money, and then you come back into the rest of your life.
Lots of good comments
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Space to get creative.
Yeah.
Public school.
Public school is
Cold
just
weather
challenging.
training. Cold weather training. I've been a little lazy this year with it, Nicholas. I have to say, I have, and part of that has been that we haven't really had cold weather until
Just recently.
Yeah, about 3 days ago it finally snowed here. So it's been a little lame for me. Though Drew, my friend Drew, that's on here, he's been going out and he's had ice, right? So he's been cutting holes in the ice and going swimming, putting me to shame.
Yeah, there's really no excuse for it. I tell ya.
Oh.
Yeah, that's right, Jay Dragon. Good quote. If you do what you enjoy, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah, I sometimes wish that I could have a bigger, deeper conversation with our friend Chester about what he thinks about the English and how we live and what he thinks we could do differently, like what he sees our kind of faults as, and how he thinks from an Amish perspective we could shift that. It would be a really interesting question to ask him about. Oh my gosh, I gotta keep reading. Yeah, Christina, I agree with you about that lacking a purpose. That is one of the things that I think the Amish community is really helpful for, is that every member is valued. And I sometimes wonder if we don't all feel that in our standard American culture is our own value just for being a part of a family and a community. The Amish, it seems like to me, are very good at that. And I know there's the shunning amongst the Amish that I have never heard of in this community here, that I know of. And I'd love to ask our midwife friend if she's ever heard of that. I just almost don't even know if they do it here, because I've never heard of anyone saying, "Oh, we shunned that person," or they've been shut out. But I don't know. Yeah.
Rick, and thanks for some, it's nice when people, if you're using a different name on here, that you let us know who you are from YouTube, because I know a lot of you by your YouTube names, and obviously most of these are your YouTube names. But yeah, so glad you had a good experience with the Scouts. I was never in the Scouts, but I know a lot of people that really loved that experience, and it was very growth-filled for them.
Oh gosh, Jay Jagan, I wish Chester could come on and talk.
So they,
yeah,
in our community, they
no
can't.
pictures, no videoing.
Yeah. So we can't even show you a photograph. That would be just, or we don't have one, first of all. And if we did, it would be disrespectful to them. So we wouldn't do it. So yeah, they'll, we can take pictures of like their horses or their buggies or things like that, but no pictures of people, and definitely no videos, at least again in this community.
I'm just looking at what Christina said here. I did what I love for a living and stopped enjoying what I used to love. Now
there's belly dance. You guys have that.
Wait, what?
Common.
Yeah, yes. Woo, girl. Okay, so I used to teach belly dance too. But I understand that, and actually, we've talked about that in terms of your brother, who is a fabulous artist. I've always said, "Why don't you sell your stuff?" And he said, "Then I wouldn't do the art anymore." So there is sometimes that finding that balance of, do you do what you love, but then do you feel like you have to do what you love? And that's one of the things that interests me in the Amish, is that some of them have jobs, but a lot of times I think of their job as just like living, like getting food ready for the winter and growing the food to keep the animals going. And what are you laughing at? I know.
Just all that goodness in the comments.
So sometimes it is interesting that we've compartmentalized our society. Somebody mentioned about a money value, different money value for different jobs. And it's like, that is really, really an interesting thing, because when I look at the Amish, a lot of times, I see them as their primary purpose is just to live. And sometimes I feel like in my life, okay, what am I going to do Like, what's my job going to be in order to make money, in order to get groceries, in order to do all these things? And it doesn't feel holistic, I guess. And sometimes I'm envious of the Amish because it seems more holistic. Like, I'm going out to care for the animals who then I get, milk from. And it's more like,
Direct.
like, right. Yeah. I don't know, like looking at my hands
Yes.
there.
More direct. Yeah, Nicole, absolutely. And I think that's, there's a real danger of glorifying other cultures, because then we can start to not see things super clearly. And ideally, we would look at different cultures. We would see a culture like the Amish and see that there are pluses and minuses. And then we'd all learn from each other, because this culture is this thing that we're constantly all co-creating and making up as we humans go along. And often that's unconscious. And I feel like it could be different this time around if we were more conscious about it. And if we looked around and said, wow, look at that culture. Because I look at the Amish culture and there's tons of stuff that I really value from them, and that I think this could make my life better and the way I interact with people better. And I look at stuff that they do and go, wow, just the whole patriarchal thing just doesn't work in my world. And I think that women obviously are going to have as much value to give to any equal thing that any man is going to give. So we don't need to segregate out and say this and this. We can all learn from each other. And that's what I wish we just had more and more of, is that co-learning and that mutual respect and growing as we all look more carefully at what
Sorry, I'm
we're
interrupting
doing.
you
No.
now.
I always seem to live here.
I do feel like their lifestyle is slower,
Mm-hmm.
and they are more willing to just stop in the middle of what they're doing. And you don't get the impression that you're interrupting them, but that this is the next thing that's coming into their life. I can't tell you how many people, Amish people, we drive by and we wave, and they're in the middle of, like putting up their laundry, and then, hi, and then like the next car, hi. Like, I don't know. I guess I feel like the Amish that I know do feel more present with what they're doing.
Rick, thank you for if that could be valued in our culture as much as anything else. And men, so we have a good friend who, the woman is a midwife and the man stays home and raises the children. In either case, that staying home and being a parent, really being a parent, that takes so much energy, love, and wisdom and growing and time. And often that's not valued, right? We give a little time off for work to a couple months so you can have a little parenting time, and then boom, back to the important thing, which is work, and kids can be raised by someone else. For kids to have engaged parents or an engaged parent, if one has to be away at work, however that's going to work, is such a valuable thing. And I think we need to honor it more.
I really like what Nicholas said about people don't like to work because we're evolved to work with our own people in a community with the cause and purpose. I like to think a lot about tribal living. This is just my own thought bubble of tribal living. But I imagine, when we have smaller groups of people that we're more intimately connected with, the way we have here with our neighbors on the ridge, it becomes very easy for us to stop what we're doing to help someone who, okay, my car is, stuck in the ditch. Okay, we're going to help you. Okay, my cows are loose, because I know them and they know me, and we do work together. And so I like that thought in a way. Not that we shouldn't reach out and help everyone, but a lot of times there's so much information that comes in. This would be a completely different topic, but we have so much information that we have to figure out what to do with. And, if you imagine there were no cell phones and, no television, no email, no.
Bye, Nicole. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us. Think about all the information we'd have to take in then. It would become more closed in. And right now, the whole world is open to us. And that sometimes can be really challenging. So one of the places that I actually am also envious of the Amish is that it seems like their world is a little bit more confined to what they can actually help with than, you know, than so much out there. Where do you turn? How do you make a difference?
Less stress and anxiety because there's not, you're not intaking all these problems that you can't help with, right? You can,
Right.
yeah. So trim thicket. You're in Wisconsin too. So your question was up. Rebecca's probably not going to see it, but we don't have day jobs. We do this. So we do YouTube. We have written some books, and so we derive some income from that. And we have a hobby horse business where we make handmade hobby horses.
Yeah, she loves horses.
And then I teach martial arts and wilderness skills. I wasn't doing that one-on-one stuff for a while, but now we're getting back into that, and I'm taking some students and clients on, and some life coaching clients, and so that's that's what we do. Oh, let's see.
So we have done very many interesting things.
Yeah, we have a huge background.
We've done all sorts of things from like
belly dance instructor.
Yeah,
and we had a troupe, so we went to Renaissance fairs.
And we were directors of entertainment for a Renaissance fair, and lots of just strange and different things.
Owned an interior painting business. We've done lots of stuff. Trained horses. Yeah.
Anyway, I guess that was off topic. Sorry about that. Let's see here.
Oh, that's nice. Children spend a lot of time spending time with them.
Yeah, that's a big thing. Because children, kids are our future in a way. I want to be taken care of when I'm older. And I think if only everybody could remember, hey, how we treat our kids is maybe how they'll think about treating us, or they'll even actually think about us when we need some help. It could be a different world. Yeah.
True bonding. Yeah, I think a lot of our relationships could benefit from. That's that overall lack of community or loneliness that is kind of pervasive in parts of our culture. And that's a lot of the things you've all been talking about, right? If we apprentice with someone, for instance, we volunteer someplace, you start to form bonds with people that can get really strong, and we can really start to care about each other. And so this can happen in families, it can happen in all kinds of social contexts. But we've got to get out there. We've got to interact with each other. We've got to help each other out. We've got to be curious about each other in order for that to happen.
That's an interesting question. Is there any problem with crime in Amish community? Good. What do you want to say about that?
Okay. We can only speak anecdotally about this.
Yeah.
We know of one Amish person that will sometimes take advantage of some English people. But everybody else that we don't know about any crime within that community. It would be so socially, it would be come down on so hard, I think, that
I don't even know if it's something that is in their perception, because they grow up from the youngest age participating, caring, sharing the load, that I'm not sure that that's even a thought.
There's probably strong social pressures too.
Yeah, and of course it could just be with our community. I have heard other Amish communities are more relaxed and have periods of time where the youth can go and experience things in the English world and decide if they want to commit to staying in the Amish community. Maybe there's more influence from the English world there, and maybe there is more thought of that. I'm not sure, but within our community, I haven't really heard about that. I also think that the Amish, when they run into English doing them a disservice, are very pacifistic.
It's a radical pacifism.
Right. So they wouldn't engage in a if someone did something bad to them, they wouldn't like react in the same way that many English people might tend to. I think it would be very different. So I don't even know if someone stole something from them, if they would even ever say anything or even see it as a stealing.
No, I know I've seen sometimes in some of the stores, they've said, we do not accept checks from this person, somebody that's written bad checks over and over. So that's a little bit of standing up for yourself. But as far as and I shouldn't be quoted on this, but as far as I understand this passivity, if you came up and you just smacked an Amish guy, he would not retaliate back. And I remember when I was talking with Chester once, I didn't ask him directly about this, but when I was talking about interactions with the English and the Amish, he was saying, well, you don't know the Amish if you think they're going to strike back or talk back. And it's, yeah. And I don't know how far that goes. If someone breaks into their house, do they just allow things to happen? I don't know how that works, honestly.
Trish is asking if the girls have close Amish friends.
That's a good question.
They don't. There's an interest in each other, but I think that the language barrier is difficult because a lot of the younger Amish still speak more Pennsylvania Dutch. But we've gotten, they've had a chance to learn the buggy driving and stuff. And that was really fun. But our worlds are so very different that I don't think their relationship would have to be different than what two English kids would be.
Yeah. And I asked somebody about, the Amish and English kids play together. It was our friend that has a farm and he employs a lot of the Amish.
Oh, yes.
He said, really, that doesn't happen a lot. So the weird thing is that kids of the same age, it seems like it's a little discouraged around here for the English and the Amish to interact if you're the same age. So as friends, Mirabelle might, the person that she learned driving the buggy from, who is Chester's daughter, who's probably 15, 16. Yeah. So, a little older enough than her that they're not exactly peers. Mm-hmm. And I think if they were peers, it might be a little more discouraged because they're slightly different ages. That's my understanding. I can't speak very expertly to that at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's such a diversity. We're talking about Amish, but we're just talking about the Amish that we know. So it could be different in different communities. I remember our midwife friend talking about where she grew up in Illinois and how different the Amish were there, where sometimes they'd have music that they'd play. And I think she remember her saying that one of the buggies was decorated with Christmas lights or something.
Yeah. And they had
they had a big bass going on. And
so very different. Yeah.
Yeah. And she said it's just a completely different community with completely different things that are acceptable there. So each Amish community, I think, is very different, which makes me think, and I don't ever think about this, so it's kind of interesting how our communities are probably very different from one another. Not just maybe the town we live in, but the social circles in which we interact are probably very different, even though we can't really see them from the outside like that.
Yeah. So Cindy, wow. That's super powerful. And from our culture, that can sound, I can only imagine what happened there. That can sound just awful because we are so into this idea that we punish. I remember Thich Nhat Hanh once talking, and it kind of shocked me at the time, I was much younger, about the pirates somewhere in the Philippines and these terrible, terrible things they were doing. And he spoke about having compassion for them and said, if we want to stop this, we have to look back at why these boys are taking this route and what happened there. And so that's that's a tough place because I do believe in personal responsibility, but at the same time, we can't be ignorant of some of the systemic stuff in our culture that that doesn't foster some basic things like good mental health, like learning compassion, like being aware of how to deal with our own emotions. This is not training we get in our culture. It's very lacking. And so in that way, I don't often think of this as a wisdom culture that we're in, and we
Oh,
need
gosh.
a good dose of that. So our Amish, so saying absolutely no music would be a
Right.
sad.
Our Amish sing
They sing in
and they
the
whistle.
fields, when they're building a house. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I don't know what the music is, but they're in there just
Yeah.
men and women singing, and it's gorgeous. And they don't have music as we would have listening to it, as far as I know, but
They
definitely
do make music.
they make music. Yeah, at least with their voices.
Yeah. And I don't know about dancing, like there's some cultures that dancing
Yeah,
isn't, I
I'm
don't
gonna
know.
assume that they don't
I'm
dance, but
pretty sure that
I
they
could be
don't, but I
wrong.
don't really know. We'll see Amish weddings taking place, but the only way we know it's an Amish wedding is because there's tons of buggies, and then all the men are dressed in their fancy stuff, and they're kind of outside, and all the women are dressed in, by fancy, I mean like they have a white apron that they wear, and the men are wearing their black hats, not like fancy, and then the women are all gathered around the house and doing, working with the food. And that I've never seen like a wedding. I don't know what it's like when they get married. I don't imagine that there's like song and dance. But I don't really know.
Yeah. Yes, Trish, that is happening more and more in our justice system, and I think over time we're going to see that pay off in some big ways. So,
It makes me think of this book that we read last summer called Changeable.
oh yeah.
If I can't remember who the author is right now, but a really interesting concept of how people who are quote doing things wrong, they need the skills to help them not do those things wrong. But what we do is we take them and put them in places where they can't learn those skills, and then expect them to somehow learn those skills so that they don't do those things again. And really we need to realize that we can change, and we can give people tools to change. So we need to help people identify, I'm not really good at transitions, or I don't have emotional resilience, so that they aren't prone to making mistakes, but nobody gives them help. We just shove the problem someplace else.
Yeah.
Really great book.
They were taking that into prisons. They were taking
this really
places.
cool system that they developed, really simple system of just being able to identify where someone is, and then how to communicate with someone, so that you could help them change. A really great book, Changeable.
Yeah, it's I think of all the learning that we've had and the training we've done with each other, Becca, and how much trouble I have with my own emotions, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So what if I had grown up never having any of that training? And that's the reality for obviously a lot of people, is zero training in that. In fact, probably anti-training, because coming from a family where there's abuse and there's all this other stuff going on, it's
I don't know, Rick. I don't know the answer to that question about the humming versus the singing. I don't have that much information. I've only just heard our Amish in our community sing and whistle, but I don't really know. And I'm guessing there's maybe even more strict communities than ours.
Bye, Christina.
Oh, thanks for joining us. Yeah, we'll probably
say hi to the animals. Yeah, we are going way over like before. We'll probably
be done soon.
At 45, we'll stop. So that's 7 minutes. Okay. That. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many elements to our culture that it's hard to know. It's almost like you just have to start inside with yourself. And I know you guys are doing that. I mean, you're questioning, you're asking, where can I be different? What's going on? Where where's the, somebody said the core. And so we just have to start with ourselves, and then know that from there, we're doing our best to try to, be there for other people and be open-minded. And we're all going to make mistakes. But I think the fact that our hearts want to make a different world is a really important thing to remember. So.
And it's been super cool to see everybody interacting here.
Mm-hmm.
And this to me feels like it, because people disagreed.
Yeah.
But did it in a way that it was respectful, listening to each other. We're all capable of this. We are, but we have to teach it. We have to model it for other people. And each of us act like that, that drop in the stream, in the pond that's going to ripple out and affect the people around us. And I think that's where our real power lies, because we can wait for governments or other things to do these things for us, but we have to just take the reins, and we have to be the ones that are leading this charge in our everyday lives. And
guys are just saying nice stuff.
Yeah.
I'm so glad there's so many wonderful, thoughtful people on here. And I'm really grateful for all of you for sharing so much insight and asking such great questions.
I'm afraid of the city, Trimmer. So
cool.
And I have
Kendon is really good in the city, though. You're a very calm person in the city.
Well, thank you.
You've had some scary experiences there.
That's nice
and you've stayed really aware and present.
But I have a friend that is a journalist, and she lives in the Twin Cities, and she often reminds me of all the great stuff going on there. And so I have to remember, she's super integrated with her community and her neighbors. And so there's great stuff going on. I can sometimes look at the whole idea of a city and just be, but it's good for me to remember that I'm in my bubble.
They're asking about if there's, physical, what would be the word?
Yeah, so corporal punishment. So I don't know the answer to that. Yeah. I'm going to guess, it's a total guess, that they do spank and other things like that. But I haven't seen evidence of it.
I don't know. Again, I'd like to ask my midwife.
Yeah.
The thing is, I also feel like that's probably comes down to how people treat their animals. So I'm guessing some Amish, for example, Chester and Esther, our friends, they are clearly have a loving relationship. They have a teamwork, and that's very apparent.
Try to get a light on you.
Yeah, I know, or if I'm fading into the background, but I don't know. I'm guessing just from, I don't know. Yeah, we don't know. The answers we don't know about in our community, but I certainly hope not. But I don't know. Patriarchal society don't always,
Yeah. Great question, and that's something we should learn about, actually.
Oh, thank you very much. Physical
Anya.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go find out some questions.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you learned a lot, because it's, we're certainly not experts. We're just speaking anecdotally from what we've experienced, but that's really good to hear. Physical chastisement. Yes.
Oh, that's interesting, Cindy. The Amish that we have come in contact with are very loving families. So I'm not sure why I would say I think they do, except for maybe just some stories in passing from different people. But the Amish families that we know are so kind. And for example, Chester started the school for special needs kids, and he loves those kids. And he talks about how much they've grown and they've changed. So again,
yeah, that's a good question. Why my first reaction was to say that could be, I guess.
Yeah,
I've seen that in English.
That's true. Contrary to the general pacifism.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So
yeah. So we'll try to learn about that, and maybe in the next live stream we can
do a little update.
Update on that, because I guess I've seen that in some very religious English.
Right. So maybe
society.
that's
So
why
maybe I
we're
was
just,
unfairly extrapolating.
yeah.
That. Yeah. So
I mean, I've never seen
seen a
an
black
Amish
eye or
person
anything like
be
that.
unkind to any of their community.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
yeah. Oh gosh, you guys, thanks so much for joining us. Yes, we'll try to do a little follow-up video and try to go back and look at some of the questions and see what we can find out. Sometimes it takes us a while to find the answers because we don't always feel like we can directly ask certain things. Oh, like you can't, my friend who's a midwife, just right before we go, you don't talk about how babies are born.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
so her husband was talking to some Amish friends, and there were some kids nearby, and his wife was the midwife for their family, and he was like talking about, oh, when the baby comes and this and that, and later on, he was taken aside and was like, we don't talk about this in front of kids. So Amish children do not know like where their mom's babies are coming from specifically. Just I don't know why.
I don't know what
that was
age
interesting.
that ends.
I'm not
It's
sure
probably pretty
when,
young,
but anyway, apparently you're not talking about that in front of the little kids. So anyway, oh
So
gosh,
I think. Oh, thanks, Drew. Yeah, it was great to be here with
yeah,
all of you.
yeah. Thanks for spending your time with us this afternoon. Really nice.
And we will try to do another one next week.
Yeah, we'll see. I
Okay.
don't know what our schedule is yet, but we'll let you guys know.
We'll aim for it.
So
Sometime next
wow,
weekend.
everybody just enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are.
Yeah, that's right, all around the world.
So yeah, thanks for this great discussion. It was really, really fun and really insightful. So yeah, and I'm so glad that you could be here too, Trish. So good to see you. Thank you all for coming. And I guess we have to say goodbye. So until next time.
So much love to you all. We'll talk soon.
Awesome. Mwah.